I uncovered the haunted secret of a woman who slept with 100 slaves and they all died by dawn. I never should have opened that door. It creaked like a dying animal, sending chills down my spine. I was just looking for a thrill, a late-night ghost story to tell my friends. But what I found was so much more disturbing. I had heard whispers about her, a woman of lavish beauty, yet draped in shadows. They said she lured men in with her charms. 100 men. Each night, they would wander into her lair, and by morning, only silence remained. The cold enveloped the room, wrapping around me like a thick fog. My breath hung in the air, visible and trembling. The smell of damp wood and something metallic, something ancient, filled my nostrils. I could hear faint whispers, no, not whispers. They were cries. I felt them skitter across my skin, a living thing. My heart raced as I stepped further inside, the shadows flickering like they were alive. I could see it now, a grand, decaying bed draped in remnants of silk, stained and torn. Each thread seemed to pulse with a history I couldn't comprehend. My fingers brushed against the fabric, and I recoiled as if it burned. I heard a noise behind me, something like footsteps creeping forward, but when I spun around, nothing was there. Just silence. My pulse thumped in my ears, then, I caught movement from the corner of my eye. The walls seemed to breathe, exhaling a low, mournful sound. It was an echo, or perhaps a warning. Panic sunk into my chest. I knew I had to leave, but my feet felt glued to the floor as dread clawed at my insides. Suddenly, a loud bang rang out. It shattered the quiet. It felt like the whole house shook. I screamed, a sound that felt small and pointless against the overwhelming darkness. And then I saw it, a figure standing in the doorway. It was tall, shadowy, and silent. My blood ran ice cold. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. What was this horror that awaited me? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The figure in the doorway shifted, its form blurring with the shadows, as if it thrived on the darkness rather than being an intruder. The silence stretched dangerously thin, ready to snap, and every instinct in me screamed to flee. But my body remained anchored, a statue poised atop the precipice of terror. Come, it beckoned, a voice like the rustling of dry leaves. Stay with me. I've been waiting. A shiver coursed through me, igniting the flesh beneath my skin. I had heard tales of spirits that sought companionship beyond the grave, but none prepared me for this palpable, suffocating feeling of betrayal. I blinked hard, desperately fighting to regain my senses, scanning for an escape. The figure remained unmoving, its gaze piercing through the dark like a predator sizing up paralyzed prey. You want to know her secret, it continued, drawing closer. Its voice was intoxicating, wrapping around my mind like a vice. You are not the first to come seeking answers, many have sought her love, and many are still here. As the words lingered like smoke, the air blossomed with the sense of decay and desperation, filling the room with a primal weight. In the looming shadows, the outlines of figures began to emerge, ghostly shapes hovering just beyond the edge of comprehension. They were pale, gaunt things with hollow eyes and mouths twisted into silent cries, their hands reaching out as if they could grasp some forlorn memory. That I stumbled backwards, as everything I believed ruptured like thin glass. These were the lost souls, the men whose names had faded into the dust of time, forever trapped in the wretched clutches of that woman. The truth clawed at my throat. She hadn't just claimed them, each one had surrendered willingly, entranced by her bewitching beauty and the lies that coated her existence like poisoned honey. In the swirling chaos, I felt a hand brush my leg, cold and clammy. My scream cut through me, yet no sound escaped my lips. I felt like a moth caught in a web spun by a wretched spider, and then it came a cacophony of deep-throated moans echoing through the chamber, reverberating with sorrow. The specters pressed closer, whispering unintelligible words, their voices like the grinding of stones beneath a relentless tide. With renewed adrenaline, I turned to flee, desperation fueling every step, but the air thickened, swallowing me whole. I collided with an unseen force, and blue-white sparkles erupted before my eyes, blinding me for a moment. Suddenly, the murmuring stopped. A profound silence blanketed the room, and I turned slowly, dreading what I would find. The air crackled with anticipation, and the pressure mounted against my chest, refusing to relent. The figure had vanished, leaving me surrounded by the hollow-eyed apparitions, intruders in my mind. They were watching, waiting, then, with a slow, theatrical grace, a golden light kindled at the far end of the room, spilling warmth and a sense of comfort that felt absolutely wrong. Mesmerized, I found myself drawn closer as the shadows retreated from the light. There, draped in ruination yet enigmatic, the woman stepped forth, a specter of alluring beauty, skin aglow with a divine radiance that belied the ages. "Welcome," she whispered, her voice a silken caress. "I have missed you." The realization struck me like a hammer. She was summoning me into her world, a dangerous invitation laced with the promise of unraveling every secret I sought. My heart frantically drummed, an echo of a truth I did not want to acknowledge, and the shadows behind her twisted and writhed, their hunger palpable. Before I could react, she extended her hand toward me, and in that moment, the air thickened with a choice that felt ancient. Did I dare step forward, risking whatever hell awaited me? Then, the walls began to thrum like a living entity, and the room started to shift. Shadows coalesced around me, their whispers rising to a fevered pitch, urgency creeping into their tones. Panic surged and, as I turned to escape, the floor beneath my feet began to crack, revealing a chasm of darkness. Brewing below. "Choose. You have until the last light fades," she called, laughter entwined with despair. With that, the ground shattered entirely, and I plummeted into the depths of a void that promised not just horror but an echo of fate rippling into eternity. My heart raced in tandem with the shadowy tendrils seeping into the abyss around me, and as I fell, I screamed, but the sound twisted into something unrecognizable. But then out of that void, a hand shot up, grasping my wrist fiercely, pulling me back just before I was swallowed whole. I looked up, my breath hitching in my throat, to find not escape, but faces, familiar faces twisted in agony, forcing me to look into the abyss as they whispered endlessly, "You can't escape, you're one of us now." And just like that, darkness closed in, sealing my fate. The darkness enveloped me, the air thick and suffocating as the wraiths loomed, their anguished faces twisted by time into grotesque masks of suffering. I felt their cold breath upon my skin, chilling me further, as their whispers grew sharper, slicing through the stagnant air filled with desperation. "You sought her, but she sought you first," one of the spirits rasped, its eyes two haunting voids reflecting the misery of countless lost souls. That I struggled against the grip that had halted my fall, wild with panic, pulled back but never free. The hands around my wrist felt familiar yet foreign, each finger like the gnawing bite of ice. I looked up to see whom amongst the lost had intervened and was horrified to meet the eyes of Edgar, a once brave man consumed by the very shadows I now faced. The agony etched in his features gnawed at my heart, a heart that beat erratically against the surge of terror that flowed through me. "You shouldn't have come," he whispered, his voice choked with despair. "She waits for you, just beyond the reach of despair. Don't let go." With every ounce of strength, I clawed at his wrist, fearing the pull of the shadows encroaching closer. They surged and writhed as if they lived to devour my spirit, and in that moment, a chorus of cries erupted from their throats, lamenting the choice I hadn't even begun to comprehend. I was caught in a nexus of their disappointment and longing, a tormenting resistance that clawed at my sanity. The ghostly tendrils uncoiled, reaching for me, their hunger physic and palpable as they drew nearer and nearer. They screeched their ghastly tales of betrayal, of coveted dreams transformed into nightmares, weaving their sorrow around me like a tomb woven from shadow. Edgar. What do I do? I gasped, fighting against the almost hypnotic lull of the woman's spectral lights shining down from the void above. His gaze shifted, stricken with a mix of regret and hesitancy. You must understand what she wants. She is bound by love and tragedy, and the remnants of her past linger on in the air, chaining us all. You are her latest requiem. Before I could grasp the weight of his words, the room warped again, the edges of reality fraying with each heartbeat. The voices twisted in a horrifying symphony, rising and peeling away from the ground as if conjuring the very essence of their grief to swallow me whole. The golden glow from the woman pulsed rhythmically, echoing the agony around me. Join us, the shadows intoned, a vibrant plea laced with hypnotic despair. You can find peace. Become one of us, cherished and remembered. Just leave behind the light. I felt a wave of desperation crash over me, dark and overwhelming, as the pull of not just death but obliteration clawed at my soul. Each second felt like an eternity as I teetered on the brink, caught between a fracture in reality, two choices with unbearable consequences. Then I spotted it, a glint in the dark, a broken mirror fragment stained with the memories of the past. I had heard words before, to see is to understand. I lunged for the shard, wrestling Edgar's grip and the shadows poised to reclaim me. I wouldn't allow myself to be another forgotten soul tangled within the depths of her lies. As my fingers grasped the glass, a freezing current coursed through me, images cascading like torrents down a waterfall. I saw her then, the woman, radiant yet wretched, luring her victims with charms of despair entwined in beauty. Each face I recognized, men she had seduced, hearts she had broken, all ending in grisly consequences, each gaze imploring me to resist. No! I cried out, grasping the truth as it dawned upon me, a revelation tinged with horror. You are not a siren, you are a destroyer. As the realization unfurled, the shadows recoiled, their piercing wails rising to deafening crescendos. They pulled away, revealing a sliver of brightness that sparked to life against the encroaching darkness. I barely managed to raise the mirror shard, its reflections coiling into a vortex of light, ready to hurl itself at the oppressive shadows that threatened to consume me. But, all at once, the ethereal woman stepped forward, her eyes igniting with a terrifying ferocity. You dare deny me? And in that moment, time shattered, the room exploded with dread. With a single flick of her wrist, a wave of energy propelled from her, shattering the mirror into 1,000 pieces that reflected the burdens each specter carried. They howled, thrashing as the shards multiplied, reality fracturing around us. I was thrust into the grasp of unending memories, the essence of 100 lives snatching at my essence, each bellowing echoes of agony and despair that would press me down into the deepest void. And then there was silence. Only when everything came crashing down around me did I realize the hidden truth: my reflection was no longer my own. Staring back at me were not just my familiar features, but the faces of all those who had succumbed before me, blending and multiplying in a horrific mosaic of loss. Welcome home, they murmured, and I felt the tendrils of shadow entwining through every fiber of my being, that I was no longer standing in the remnants of a haunted home, but upon the precipice of an eternal binding, crying out in defiance as my world began to dissolve into darkness, a harrowing scream piercing the void, leaving an echo unanswered. And then I saw her smile glowing as the shadows spread unrelentingly, a cruel comfort drawing me closer. As the darkness deepened, I understood the magnitude of my fate. This was only the beginning. The darkness thickened, wrapping around me like a living blanket, the air crackling with the energy of regret and despair. I found myself consumed by the reflected faces, each one pleading, each one suffering, their anguish an inescapable chorus in the suffocating silence. For a fleeting second, the haunting laughter of the woman echoed through the void, mingling with the desperate cries of those I had unwittingly joined. As the weight of the eternity pressed upon me, a realization surged within, a spark of resistance. I was not yet finished, I was still here, my heart drumming relentlessly, a living testament to my refusal. I fought against the tide, pushing back against the burden of their misery, seeking a way to break free from this ghastly convergence. Find your light, a voice seeped through, soft yet insistent, slicing through the pervasive despair. It resembled Edgar's, though strained and warped as if emerging from the depths of another world. The woman's power thrives on despair. If you lose hope, you tether yourself to her, but if you remember you will find your escape. I gulped down clarity like an elixir, urging my thoughts to gather like soldiers preparing for battle. I needed to channel the essence of those lost souls, their pain transforming into strength. I focused intently, visualizing a luminous barrier, a blinding shield against the depths of shadowy anguish clawing at my sanity, but the woman was relentless, her smile taunting. Do you truly believe the light can save you? All it does is illuminate the truth of your fate. With a flick of her wrist, shadows coiled and lashed out like serpents, closing in around me, their icy grips trying to suffocate my spirit. That I felt the warmth of budding determination surge through my veins as I envisioned that radiant flicker, the ignited spark of raw emotion that had once inspired my hope. The memories flew, coursing alongside my pulse: laughter, love, cherished moments. I focused on those golden fragments, igniting them in my mind, wrapping them tightly around the darkness like chains, each memory a link unbreakable. With a roar fueled by desperation, I thrust my hands before me, channeling every flicker of hope I could muster, and shouted, "I will not succumb." A blinding wall of light erupted from my palms, illuminating the cavernous expanse. The shadows recoiled, their steadiness dissipating as the brilliance cast away the veil of despair, slicing through the dark tendrils as they screeched in terror. For that brief moment, I could hear their cries transform into a harmonic blend of hope and anguish. But the woman was unfazed. "You think yourself bold, but each act of defiance only makes you more appealing to me," she laughed, a sound sharp enough to cut through the night, echoing as the shadows began to steel themselves once more. "More fuel for your eternal flame." The light expanded outward, washing over the lost souls who had become a tapestry of sorrow behind me. I could see their faces clearer now, not just imprints of despair, but memories. "Stand with me," I cried, urging them to summon the remnants of their own light against her cruel grip. For a moment, it seemed to work. Their silhouettes flickered, the agony in their features waning as they began to remember the joys life had once gifted them. As I drew strength from them, I noticed a shimmering thread weaving through their figures, connecting us, the bond of shared despair transforming into the force of collective hope. "You cannot breach this," the woman hissed, her voice darkening, crackling with rage. "You do not belong here, and yet I need you." With my fear surging back, I faltered for only a moment, glancing at her. "What do you mean by that?" The shadows shifted, revealing something grotesque hidden beneath the surface of her beauty. There, in the depths of her eyes, lay a flicker of something not entirely malevolent, a desperate hunger, a pull that resonated not just in the darkness but within my own heart. "The more light you bring into this world, the stronger I grow. But you will never escape." In that instant, I felt the connection solidify, the realization of the cyclical nature of her existence settling upon my shoulders like a grim mantle. Her beauty was an illusion, a lure, but how could I resist the pull of her tragedy, the haunting allure that whispered promises of understanding? I had a choice: to succumb to her grasp or to wield the light as my weapon, shattering the chains of despair binding not just myself but all those around me. Would I fight to liberate them, knowing the risk of her darkness still loomed? The war of emotions raged wildly within me, and just as I found my resolve, I heard a distinct sound, a quiet, nearly imperceptible whisper that sliced through the noise of anguish and hope. "Help us," it pleaded, deeper than any voice or thought I had ever heard. It was then I saw it, a shimmering veil rising from the debris of shattered glass, something trapped, lingering beyond the specter of the woman. With a sudden jolt, I realized what it was. Memories of those who initially sought her, their faces blending into mine, telling tales not only of defiance but of survival. "Your fate isn't sealed, cast the darkness away." My own voice stirred within me. And with that command, I prepared to throw myself headlong into the unknown of the shadows, even as the spectre surged forth, her smile widening into something sinister that hinted at the depths yet to unfold. The darkness clawed greedily, slipping through my fingers as I reached for the shimmering veil, feeling the shadows twist and stretch toward me with ferocious speed, time ripping at the seams once again. My heart raced, aching for breath as I felt their presence surge, the alluring pull of despair beckoning me back. I was at the threshold, teetering on the edge of worlds intersecting, light and dark poised to clash in an explosion of unimaginable horror, and then the veil burst open, the illusion fracturing, revealing a scene so dark it could swallow the sun whole. In an instant, I saw the true reflection of my past, an unspeakable truth that forced my breath to hitch, my resolve to waver. I was not merely battling the darkness, I had become a soul caught in a cycle of endless betrayal, and the woman's laughter rang louder than ever, resonating through the very fibers of my existence. As I plunged forward, I could only scream into the abyss, desperate to know whose face awaited me on the other side, desperate for the answers that would change my fate forever. The scream echoed through the cavern, a raw instinctive howl that shocked even me. The shadows recoiled, swirling like a living entity, but their retreat only served to feed the pulse of dread that gripped my heart. I was suspended in the crossfire of light and darkness, teetering on the cusp of revelation. As I moved closer to the veil, tendrils of shadow lunged forward, eager to reclaim what moments ago had begun to slip through their grasp. The faces materialized, terrified and pleading, the history behind each visage seeping into my bones. I needed to know what had transpired to tether them here, and why their souls writhed as if caught in a web of sorrow. What surged from the veil was not mere nostalgia, it was a pulse that resonated with my very existence. A ghastly banquet of whispers enveloped me, weaving tales forgotten beneath layers of fear and malice. Among the cacophony, one voice rose above the rest, distinct, sharp, familiar. "Your life is a mirror," it taunted, a mocking sound that twisted like daggers in my gut. "She has taken more than you know. Do you really think you can save them? They will use you as she used them, you fool." The ground trembled beneath my feet, the shadows thrumming with life, eager for the chaos that followed the revelation. I blinked, struggling to distinguish reality from illusion. The layers of the truth began to peel away, revealing grotesque scenes of entrapment, a once vibrant life extinguished in the pursuit of a darkling promise, a life for a life, beauty weighed against unfathomable loss, the memory flickered, a fleeting image of an elegant room adorned with velvet and candlelight. In that moment, I witnessed her, the woman, draped in shadows, presiding over despondent souls like a macabre goddess of desperation. Tendrils of darkness circled around her, wrapping the hapless around their sunny edges and absorbing their vitality in a savage dance of seduction. They were not mere slaves, they had danced willingly into the abyss, enchanting yet terrified, until the dawn of reckoning arrived, shattering their dreams into shards, and then, broken laughter reverberated through the air, mingling with the cries of the lost, weaving together an orchestra of suffering so profound it threatened to engulf me whole. "You tread upon the precipice of choice, darling. Will you be the orchestrator of my rebirth? You fail to comprehend you are entwined with me, just like the faces before you," the woman cooed, her voice sparking dread as it lengthened, coiling around my thoughts. "Those memories you so cherish, they led you here. You accepted grace at a price, but you are not the first nor the last. But unlike them, darling, you have something else to offer." Ravaged by her confession, I staggered backward, my breath hitching in a constricted throat. A sickening truth burgeoned, a twisted lineage stretching far beyond simple despair. The realization grasped my heart with ice-cold fingers. Those lost souls were only the beginning. As I regained my footing, I noticed them, huddled figures emerging from the shadows like wraiths waking from a haunting dream. They were the forgotten, lingering echoes of countless lives she had ensnared, living in oblivion as pawns in her cruel masquerade. One by one, they turned their hollow eyes upon me, their souls calling out as if recognizing a savior in the faint horizon. Yet, I could see the truth behind their waning glow. They, too, had once been strong, fiery, and now, nothing but marionettes in a dance of anguish. Carefully, I summoned courage, channeling the light within, the warmth of hope and humanity battling against the winter chill of despair. "You don't have to be bound any longer," I shouted, as the instinct to fight stirred within me once more. "Let me help you break free. Let the darkness break upon the dawn." But as the glow of conviction strained against the shadows, the woman's twisted smile unfurled, revealing a darkness so profound it shattered my resolve. "Foolish child!" she roared, towering before me like a tempest. What do you think will happen when you pierce the heart of this cursed reflection? Each soul you believe you save is a thread that ties you closer to their fate. The sanctuary you seek is an omen, it is a falling storm. The air crackled ominously, and shadows lurched with an unnatural vigor, slithering forth with an urgency that struck terror deep into my heart. I could feel the menacing presence of something larger weaving through the darkness, threatening to break free. The veil shook violently, flickering between worlds, and the room grew impossibly cold, a breath of the abyss stealing through time itself. Tenebrous laughter echoed horrifyingly melodic, piercing the shadows like shards of glass, and it sent an icy shiver down my spine. The faces blurred into one grotesque visage, the sound of their agony morphing into a discordant symphony. The moment was slipping away, the darkness coiling tighter, threatening to envelope me. In that fateful heartbeat, I perceived a tremor in the fabric of the night, a fleeting glance low to the ground, invisible and yet unmistakable, the shadows wrought tendrils extending back toward the depths of the unseen, retreating, but not without something else, with dread settling in my gut like a stone. I turned my gaze just in time to lock onto something sinister shifting behind the veil, a gaping abyss. Vacuous and ravenous. Thoughts raced in panic as I realized the horror. It was not merely souls she had taken, but an ancient darkness that existed long before her, an insatiable force waiting to be reborn, harnessed in her malevolence. And then came the thunder, the resonant beat of an unfurling truth capturing my attention completely. The world seemed to collapse around me as the force veered toward a singular focus. My heart raced against the unimaginable as I sensed the frail tether between bravery and oblivion wearing thin. The shadows, empowered by the fear of the lost, pressed forward, eager to plunge deeper into the pit of wretchedness. In that moment of lucidity, time seemed to stall, and the whispers merged into a singular voice shouting a name, a warning, and perhaps a final plea for redemption. Trust no one. Do not. But before I could process it fully, the shadows surged forward, engulfing me in their frigid embrace, drowning out the sound of my own breath, weaving their darkness around my form with impossibly tight coils. The woman's laughter echoed through the night, saturated with twisted malice, heralding the dawn of an unfamiliar terror, and as my eyes fluttered shut, the connection severed by overwhelming despair, I realized the truth. In this battle between light and dark, I had become the focal point, the very genesis of a horror yet to unfold. What lay on the other side awaited not salvation, but a truth I was wholly unprepared to face. And then darkness claimed me, dragging me into the embrace of the void, leaving only fear pure and childlike filling the space where hope once lingered. The cold seeped into my bones like poison, encasing me in an icy prison where no light dared to dance. In this void, time slipped away like grains of sand, and the only constant was the gnawing ache of fear entwined with longing, a longing for understanding, for freedom, for a means to escape her grasp. I felt the shadows tightening around me, pulling, clawing, their whispers dissolved into an unbearable chorus, each note vibrating with anguish and despair. Shapes flickered in the dark, ephemeral forms barely discernible through the haze of nothingness, a sea of souls lost to the nocturne of a powerful darkness. I could feel their agony radiating, a heat-damp tether that linked our fates. And then, just beyond the fringes of my awareness, there was a presence, something ancient and unfathomable, coiled within the essence of despair biding its time. Child, there are secrets here that even the light fears to illuminate, a voice slithered through the murmur, textured with resignation. It was trembling yet authoritative, resonating with a truth too harsh to bear. I turned my head, though the darkness was thick as ink. Who are you? I whispered, the words stumbling from my lips like broken glass. The shapes undulated, coalescing into a hunched figure, its outline flickered with ethereal luminescence, a glimmer of the living that once was. I could see the outline of what had once been a face, gaunt and hollow, steely eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that cut through the dread encasing my heart. I am but a fraction of what was lost. We were once as you, flesh and spirit intertwined. She devoured us, child, stripping us from vitality until only echoes remained, it murmured, its words weaving a sorrowful interlude. But you are cloaked in something different. What do you mean? I stammered, fighting against the grips of shadows that threatened to swallow me whole. You are the pivot, the crux held by the tether of her desires. You encapsulate everything she craves, it whispered, the warning echoing wider, swirling like rustling leaves in the wind. You cannot save us, you can only end the cycle. The revelation struck deep, igniting a smoldering ember within my chest. As my heart thumped wildly, straining against the weight of fate, I realized I was not merely a victim, I was a vessel, a pawn in her macabre game. My purpose had morphed into something sinister, the shadows rumbled, swelling with rage, snapping their tendrils tighter, constricting as I panicked. No. I won't let her claim me. I won't join you, I'd rather die. The words escaped before I could wrestle them back into silence, laden with desperation. The figure's eyes softened with a hint of sorrow as it reached out, spectral fingers brushing against my consciousness. You may already be lost, but know this: the dawn is not merely a promise of light, it is the sound of a reckoning. To sever the bond, you must face the very core of the darkness. Do you have the courage to confront what lies within? A raucous laughter erupted from the depths, echoing across the expanse of the void, taunting my decision with a mocking finality. Courage? It drew in, as if tasting the word like fine wine. You stand at the edge of despair, ready to plunge into the depths of your own ruin. What will you find there, truth? Or more lies? With each note, the laughter pierced through the haze, overwhelming everything in its path, drowning me in the inexorable weight of defeat. My thoughts collided, creating a frenzied storm as images danced chaotically, memories of the faces, their brightness dulled, flickered like dying embers before fading into the dark. Then, without warning, as shadows clamored forth, I was propelled against an unseen wall, the force grounding me back to existence with explosive ferocity. I was caught within a tempest, swirling violently before being thrust out, tumbling back toward another reality. Light cut through the inky gloom, slicing through to reveal a labyrinth of horrors, the lengthening corridor before me aflame with shadows, swaying like a ringleader ready to unveil its nightmarish symphony. My heart thudded heavily as an urgent calling pulsed from the depths of that corridor, a symphony of desperate cries and unquenched yearning. Each plea bore a weight of suffering, each note a remnant of those who had slipped through the veil. The woman's silhouette loomed at the end of the hall, her shadow stretching long and imposing, an inexorable presence shaping the distance between us. Did you enjoy that little detour? She crooned, an edge of pleasure lacing her voice, darkened with malice. Welcome back to my domain, darling. Did you truly think you could escape so easily? Beneath intoxicating allure, certainty faded, a dread shedding all remnants of comfort. I could hear the distant echoes of souls crying out as their torment became an omnipresent force, echoing along the corridor, but the darkness behind me twisted, collapsing into a void as the shadows closed in, playing their final hand. The woman's smile widened, anticipation igniting her gaze as she beckoned me forward. Come now, darling. The games we play have only just begun. Suddenly, an unearthly howl ripped through the air, shaking the very foundation of my resolve. In that breaking moment, I witnessed 1,000 tortured souls rising from the gloom, their faces morphing from despair into rage, a galaxy of spirits, each vying for liberation, and as the darkness coalesced, a great swell of panic erupted. My grip on reality snapped entirely, thrusting me against the very edge of anguish. But before I could gather myself, the echoes rose in a chilling crescendo: join us, join us, join us. Just as the echoing chorus began to fill my every thought, the woman's voice returned, a detrimental whisper slicing through the air. It's time for your ultimate embrace. Will you take their place, or shall I claim you instead? And in that instant, before the shadows surged, I felt reality fracture. A knife plunged into the wound of despair as I was thrown into a whirlpool of darkness, screaming for release, torn between wanting to succumb and fighting for the flickering light that lay just beyond the boundaries of despair. The abyss awaited, and the echoes of those lost beckoned me, each voice a siren song drawing me ever closer to the precipice of oblivion. The air was thick with an overwhelming stench of decay, an oppressive miasma that clawed at my throat and filled my lungs with an insatiable dread. I felt as if I was wading through viscous memory, a past that clung to the present like a parasite, sucking the hope from my veins. Each breath I drew felt like an invasion, a reminder of the inevitability that awaited me within these twisted walls she called home. The corridor extended infinitely, and with each step, flashes erupted in my mind, visions of the tortured faces I had glimpsed, their eyes brimming with despair. They swirled around me like phantoms, alive yet hauntingly empty, their whispered pleas weaving a tapestry of anguish that wrapped tighter with each heartbeat. "Help us, please," they echoed, their vulnerability and desperation pulling at the very fabric of my sanity. Panic clawed at my insides as every instinct screamed at me to turn back, to flee down the hallway from the malignant force looming ahead. But something palpable, a strange magnetic pull, lured me closer to the woman draped in veils of darkness. Her figure shimmered at the end, both beautiful and terrifying, an embodiment of all the chaos that had consumed those lost souls. "Don't you wish to know the truth?" Each word lilted from her lips like a soft caress, laced with poison and seduction. "You stand on the precipice of knowledge, yet your heart trembles at the brink. What if I told you that you could save them? That you hold the key to their release?" The offer hung suspended in the air, laden with temptation. My heart thundered in my chest, battling the urge to believe her. In that moment, clarity pierced through the fear, reminding me of the specter I had encountered, a flickering ghost of truth hidden among the shadows. "What do I need to do?" I snapped, anger flaring in defiance against the dread coiling around me. "What must I face?" Her laughter resonated, echoing through the corridor until it morphed into the wails of countless souls, a cacophony that reverberated through the marrow of my bones. "Ah, sweet child, the truth is often more horrific than the darkest night. Step forth, and you will awaken the memories bound to this dread place." She gestured towards a door ancient and foreboding, carved with scripts that writhed like living tendrils under my gaze. Each rune pulsed with an energy that thrummed through the very essence of the house, my body rebelling against the command to approach. Behind the threshold, a haunting promise lay dormant, a deep resonance hung in the air, pulsing with a breathless heartbeat. "Don't you want to see what happens to those who dared to love me? To understand the fate of each soul who became entrapped in my web?" The taste of blood surged in my mouth, but still, I could not resist the anguished cries thrumming at the edges of my consciousness. Steeling my resolve, I stepped forward, crossing the threshold into the room that housed forgotten horrors. It was a cell of faded opulence, littered with remnants of each life snuffed out by the woman's longing. Shadows clung stubbornly to every corner, obscuring the full extent of the horrors contained within. As I adjusted to the dim light, the faces of the lost souls leaped into view, springing to life in vivid detail. They were twisted remnants of their former selves, their lifeless eyes hollow yet somehow filled with desperate energy. Around me, shadows writhed, echoing their fragmented pleas, wrapping around my feet like gnarled roots, pinning me to the ground. An undercurrent of manic whispering flooded my ears. "Free us, unleash our truth." The words twisted, sometimes merging into screams, at others becoming murmurs, the very essence of their suffering creating a melody unsettling enough to shake me to my core. In a corner stood a mirror, its surface swirling like liquid void, a lens into eternity. As I approached, the glass revealed fleeting images, flashes of anguish and despair, moments of passion that tainted each soul drawn to her. 1,000 lives extinguished, only to leave echoes of torment woven into the very fabric of this structure, stained by her insatiable hunger. All at once, the whispers crescendoed into a fever pitch, a terrifying symphony that clawed at my sanity. "She hides our secrets. Unravel her web." The shrieks pierced through the chaos, carving a path deep into my mind, demanding agency. Suddenly, the mirror's surface shattered, exploding in a blinding wave of light. Fragments danced like stars around me, revealing glimpses into the past, the beautiful, entrancing woman engaged in her dark arts, basking in the glory of conquest as she drew mortal souls into an eternal embrace. I was the vessel she sought, and it dawned on me, I was the last soul yet to be consumed, the final piece in her monstrous tapestry. Just as clarity washed over me, a shadow loomed behind the shards of glass, the woman's figure wreathed in darkness and fury. "You shouldn't have come here, dear child. You've awakened them. Now, the price for your curiosity must be paid." But before she could claim me, the fragments of souls surged forth, pushing against the very fabric of the void, their combined spirit erupting in a unified roar, a force breaking through the darkened chains of her will that I felt the ground tremble beneath me, the room distorting as the shadows twisted into a grotesque shape, an amalgamation of the lost, a gaping maw of desperation seeking liberation. Then, as if the universe itself drew a breath, time suspended for a haunting heartbeat, and the abyss erupted around me, a multitude of hands clawing at the air, yearning for release. "Take us with you," they whispered in my ear, drowning out the woman's furious cries. "Free us or join us." And just like that, the room shook. The mirror's shards coalesced into a giant mouth, hungry and insatiable, yawning wide with an insistent pull, ready to consume everything in its path. Caught between the woman who sought my soul and the legion of lost souls clamoring for salvation, I stood frozen, heart racing, as the floor began to crack, sending me tumbling toward the encroaching darkness. "Choose," echoed in every corner of my mind as the room twisted, her laughter merging with the cries of the forsaken while my world shattered like the mirror itself. I was falling, spiraling between realms, and at that moment, nothing felt more terrifying than facing the horrifying truth of a life spent in chains. The sensation of plummeting through darkness consumed me, an unfathomable void that twisted and morphed into 1,000 nightmarish shapes. I could scarcely discern the screams that chased me. Was it mine, or the souls escaping their tormented prison? A cacophony, routine in its horror, echoing through the abyss, assaulted my senses, drowning my thoughts in despair. And then, with a brutal jolt, gravity reasserted its presence. I crashed onto the solid ground, rolling into a suffocating mass of luminescent shadows. I blinked, struggling to make sense of the chaos that enveloped me. Gradually, they formed faces, familiar faces, each etched with anguish and longing. The room, a sprawling chamber, less a cell and more a sepulchre, breathed shadows thick with the weight of despair. Wrought with intricate carvings that whispered of forgotten tales, it was a mausoleum of emotions indefinitely frozen in time. They clawed at my consciousness, desperate whispers swirling like a tempest around me, coaxing memories from the deepest recesses of my mind. "Help us. You can hear us," they urged, their faces blurring in and out like wraiths caught in endless twilight. "Don't leave us here." Panic sliced through the haze. I staggered backwards and collided with an object so cold it seized my breath, a statue, polished marble contorted into the form of a woman, draped in despair. Her eyes, deep wells of sorrow, bore down on me, as if she too craved freedom. Instinctively, my fingers traced the curves of her form, feeling the chill seep into my flesh, pulling me under the waves of time itself. "Her power is unending," a voice rasped from the shadows. It flowed through me as palpable as ice, a pulsating anger that vibrated in my bones. I whipped around, heart racing. Stepping from the depths was a figure once familiar but twisted by the malevolent energy that charged the air. I recognized him as a man who had been claimed by the woman long ago, one of the first in her tangled web. The remnants of his humanity were choked by shadows that flicked and swirled around him, threatening to eclipse his form entirely. "You've awakened the wraiths of the past. They seek vengeance." With a flick of his hand, the shadows coalesced and danced, and the walls began to pulse, resonating with a sickening rhythm. Images ensnared in darkness flickered across them, the woman standing beside each lost soul, perverting their love, their anguish. Each scene etched deeper into my memory, burning with the fire of unforgotten passions and endless betrayals. "They long for blood," he said, his voice low and trembling, filled with the weight of 1,000 regrets. "Their hunger feeds her, they will not cease until they reclaim the life she stole." As his words sunk in, the room shifted, walls folding inwards, compressing the very air around me until I felt like a prey caught in a snare. The whispers escalated into a furious outcry, a hunger resounding through the exclamations, "Claim your right. Join us." The shadows closed in, wrapping around my wrists and ankles, pulling me toward the stone figure of the woman. "Your presence gives them hope," the man continued, his voice a quivering edge of hysteria. "Don't you see? Only you can bring the cycle to an end. Before the dawn rises, you must confront the truth of her desire. Searing pain exploded in my chest, causing me to gasp as I stumbled. Images flooded my mind, memories not my own, of love blossoming under her beguiling gaze, of heartbeats and whispered promises made in the dark. But underneath, an indelible stain of betrayal, each sweet embrace twisted into something monstrous. "Flee!" he yelled, desperation seeping into his voice. "You must escape before she takes you as her own, or you will end up as one of them, forever bound to this cursed place. The only way to free them is to sever her bonds." Suddenly, the door behind me, the only means of escape, burst open, revealing a swirling fog that spilled forth like an angry tide. I turned to the man who had shared this truth, finding him locked in a battle with his own shadow, the outline of the woman advancing behind him, ravenous and cruel. "Do it!" he shouted, and the shadows pushed against him, pulling him into their depths as his form began to dissolve. "Do not hesitate." Heart pounding, I bolted toward the escaping storm, a tempest of anguish and desperation. It roiled in fury, engulfing the room, swallowing the shadows, drawing me deeper into the unknown. With each step, whispers grew into a chaotic storm, yearning for release, urging me to turn back, to clash with the darkness unfurling behind me. Then, without warning, the ground beneath my feet cracked open, yawning wide like a gaping mouth awaiting to swallow everything whole. The glowing faces of lost souls rushed forward, their hands outstretched, their cries rising to a fevered pitch, "Join us! Join us!" A flash of searing light erupted, blinding me, and in that excruciating moment, I stumbled. Barely able to hold my balance, I felt the overwhelming pull of the abyss quaking below, the very essence of despair clawing at me, threatening to drag me down into the eternal void. "Know you the cost?" The woman's voice slithered into my mind, sharp as a dagger. "Will you embrace your destiny or will you run?" As the swirling tempest twisted, I felt the grasp of many shadows tightening around my throat, 1,000 anxious souls reaching out, torn between salvation and damnation, as I teetered on the edge, and just as I made my choice, my breath hitching in my throat, the ground erupted with a strident crack, and everything shattered into oblivion. I was left suspended in agony, the wails of the forsaken rising to a fevered pitch around me, then silence, a deafening, suffocating silence, wrapping me in an unyielding darkness that promised either obliteration or an awakening of the truths still buried within. The silence weighed heavily, clinging to my skin with an icy caress, making each tentative breath feel like an act of defiance. My surroundings had morphed into a vacuum, devoid of the wailing faces and pulsing shadows, but the gnawing dread nestled deep within me refused to subside. In this hollow abyss, the memory of the cascading chaos lingered like a fading echo, whispering secrets too horrific to comprehend. That I turned slowly, my heart racing, expecting the spectral woman to emerge from the dark and claim me. But nothing moved. There was only a sinister stillness, punctuated by the soft, rhythmic thudding of my heartbeat, a reminder of my living flesh against this intangible void. Then, an unsettling sensation prickled at the back of my neck, a profound awareness that I was not alone. The air thickened, charged with a presence just beyond my reach, lurking in the darkness, waiting. It was an unspeakable horror that transcended mere fear, an understanding that something ancient and malignant was awake, unfurling just out of view, hungry for my terror. As I struggled to make sense of my surroundings, the ground trembled beneath me, a telltale shudder of something approaching. I stumbled back, blood hammering in my ears, my breath hitching as shadows began to gather at the edges of my awareness. They coiled like serpents, inching closer, wrapping tighter, their forms shifting into grotesque representations of the souls I had seen. Each face twisted in despair, their eyes filled with an insatiable hunger, a need for vengeance. "Help us!" they cried, but their voices were now warped, distorted, merging into a cacophony that echoed through the void. "You cannot escape the truth of her wrath. She knows you are here." The heaviness of dread enveloped me like a suffocating shroud, weighing me down as if the sorrow itself sought to absorb me. I backed away, but the shadows surged forward, their hunger palpable. I could almost feel their chilling breath, recounting the tales of love twisted into travesties under the woman's gaze. In my frantic retreat, I felt something solid underfoot, a concealed staircase leading downwards, swallowed by darkness. It beckoned to me, promising either salvation or damnation. With no time to contemplate the repercussions of my descent, I plunged into the depths of the unknown, spiraling down into a suffocating darkness, the walls whispering warnings I couldn't quite grasp. Each step echoed, merging with the cacophony of voices that had begun to follow, heavy feet drumming against the stone, a morose march of lost souls yearning for freedom. The air turned colder, my breath visible in the dim light that flickered like a dying ember. As I reached the bottom, a sprawling chamber opened before me, its architecture leaning toward the grotesque. The walls pulsed with trapped emotions, a mosaic formed from long-buried memories that throbbed beneath my fingertips like a heartbeat. The ground fell away, giving way to a shallow pool that glimmered ominously in the dim light, a mirror reflecting not just my face, but haunting memories that flared to life in the depths, images of people I had never known played out before me, a procession of the damned, each face belonging to one of the woman's lost lovers, playing out their final moments in a loop of tragedy. I cried out, staggering backward, the truth settling like lead in my stomach. I was trapped within the very story that consumed them, caught in the web of the woman who had unified them all, a queen of the abandoned, waving her twisted desires like a banner through the ages. Join us. The voices implored, their utter desperation a tangible force. Sever her chains. My throat tightened as the specters of the past lunged for me, their hands reaching through the pool's surface, pulling at my soul with the weight of their unfulfilled wishes. I stumbled back, my heart racing, the visions swirling like a fever dream, intensifying into a singular entity, a woman, ethereal and malevolent, floating just above the water's surface. Why do you resist? She called, her voice both a melodic lullaby and a chilling elegy. You are one of them, just as I promised. I need you, as they did. Come to me, we can reclaim what was stolen. And then she smiled, a radiant, maddening grin that spoke of eternal bliss and devastating torment, as though the very fabric of her being thrummed with power over life and death. The water began to bubble and churn violently, waves crashing against the edges of the chamber, signaling the awakening of something monstrous within. My pulse thundered in my ears, echoed by the souls thrumming against the edges of the pool, clawing, pleading to break free. You must choose. They howled, their haunting cries rising in anguish. Release us. As the woman stepped closer, her features flowing into something almost human, almost monstrous, her outstretched hand beckoned me into the whirlpool of chaos, into a destiny laced with mortality and darkness. I teetered on the cusp of decision, knowing full well what I had to do, but just as my fingers grazed the edge of the abyss, the walls of the chamber erupted with a deafening roar, the shadows howling in rage as I felt the ground quake one last time beneath me. The chamber began to implode, waves crashing mercilessly within as if the very heart of despair had ruptured, sending forth all the trapped souls in a final desperate surge toward freedom, and in that moment of terror, the radiant smiled woman faded, leaving behind an echoing laughter that reverberated through the collapsing chamber as everything tore apart around me. Then, as the darkness closed in like a vice around my throat, I made the only choice I could, screaming as I lunged toward the pool of twisted memories, unaware of what awaited on the other side of that malevolent light. Just before plunging into the chaos, I caught sight of a familiar face swirling amid the violent shadows, eyes wide with desperation and pain. It was the man from before, the one torn asunder by his own shadows, now reaching out, his voice a haunting whisper amidst the storm, "Find the truth before it's too late. The dawn is closing in." And with that, I was lost in the tumult of darkness as the echoes of lost souls engulfed me, the abyss prepared to cradle me in its unremitting grasp. I awoke, gasping, on a cold stone floor that felt both familiar and foreign beneath me. My surroundings were dim, illuminated by a flickering light that struggled against an oppressive darkness, swallowing everything it touched. Confusion enveloped me like a shroud as I blinked, trying to reconcile what had just happened: the crashing waves of shadows, the haunting laughter of the woman, the faces of those desperate for freedom. The clamor of their cries receded slowly, but not entirely, leaving an echo of dread that resonated deep within my bones. I pushed myself upright, the chill of the floor biting at my skin as I surveyed the damp chamber. It was carved from rock, ornate yet crumbling, adorned with faded murals depicting tales of love twisted into suffering. The air was thick with the scent of decay, a miasma that wrapped around my senses, urging me to flee. Yet something tethered me here, a curiosity deeper than fear, an unsettling sense that the truth awaited me. In the center of the chamber stood the pool, its surface smooth and unnaturally still, mirroring my conflicted expression. I could see fragments of faces swirling beneath the surface, glimpses of agony frozen in time. My heart pounded as their cries brushed against my mind like a caress, pulling at me the cries of those who had glimpsed the woman's affection only to be consumed. She had promised them love, but it was a love laced with betrayal, woven intricately with their downfall. A revelation flickered to life amid the shadows of memory: I was her next intended sacrifice. This chilling realization settled heavy upon my soul as I approached the pool, drawn despite the overwhelming fear tightening around my chest. The water now shimmered, reflecting not just memories but my own face, warped and fragmented by anguish. I could see the very essence of the woman rise behind me, a spectral figure cloaked in shadow, her beauty both mesmerizing and terrifying, a magnet for all things lost. "You came back," she purred, her voice smooth as silk, filled with a sweetness that almost made it hard to resist. "You are drawn to the truth. You wish to know what binds you to me." No longer willing to be ensnared by her seduction, I stood my ground. "I want to free them. You've claimed too many." Her laughter rolled through the chamber, a haunting melody that chilled the air. "You think you cannot be claimed? You are already mine, dear child. You are the key to my song and the thread that holds our stories together." With an unsettling allure, she gestured toward the pool, and the surface rippled, transforming. I was drawn into visions of lives that played out before me, flickering scenes of joy, entrapment, and despair. Each face emerged, men and women who had once captivated her, their eyes alight with passion and hope before it was consumed by a haunting darkness. Each flicker birthed a horror. Not all had died by dawn, many remained, tortured by the weight of their choices. "No!" I cried, recoiling as she reached for me. But the connection was tangible, an unseen bond that shattered the illusion of my independence. The moment my skin brushed the water's surface, a jolt of energy surged through me. I was flooded with emotions, memories, not my own, love and devastation intertwined, feeding the flame of despair that flickered in my heart. And then, the realization hit with the force of a tidal wave: I was one of them. "Come to me, beautiful soul," she beckoned, her voice a silk-laden promise, spanning centuries of despair intertwined with desire. "Join us in a reprieve you crave. Deny it no longer, become part of the light. Let your essence consume me, and together we can dance in this twilight forever." Her eyes glinted with something sinister, a spark of unyielding purpose that set my heart racing in abandon. I resisted, yet could feel tendrils of shadow wrap around my limbs, beckoning me, whispers that twisted and turned, pleading me to embrace the darkness. Her influence pulsed through my veins, intoxicating, and suddenly everything shifted. I was no longer just a part of my own story, I was an integral fragment of something much larger, an eternal cycle woven into the fabric of despair. "Witness the truth," she commanded, and the pool erupted with visions of me, their next chosen. Faces blurred and morphed, each one only a ghost of an echo that built upon itself. The cycle must continue. You will save them or join us. As the tortured voices of the lost swirled around me, the shadows thickened, mounting toward a crescendo meant to shatter the soul. The truth of her power became clear: my fate was entwined with hers, a third thread in a tapestry of echoing horror. The panic grasped at my heart, urging me to fight, to release myself from the clutches of her darkness. In that instant, I understood. I was not simply a victim, I had willingly sought her out, intoxicated by tales of love and desire, blinded by the allure of her promise. I had come seeking the truth, yet had found something far more horrifying, a revelation that would haunt me forever. "No!" I screamed, pulling my energy back, unwilling to let the shadows claim me. My movement stirred the air filled with whispers, igniting the stories trapped beneath the remnants of those who had come before and were now desperate for release. I will not succumb to the despair that chains you. A brilliant light erupted within the depths of the pool, constricting the shadows, pushing back against the spectral woman's hold. I felt the warmth of hope surge through me, a defiance igniting my spirit. Together, I urged, drawing the spirits together with a wave of love that surged through me not for desire, but for liberation. But the darkness churned, writhing with fury, attempting to snuff out the empathic bond that had grown. She screamed, a furious wail that vibrated through the very walls, and in that frantic moment, everything erupted. The walls expanded and contracted, the pool reached out, and the swirling mass of etheric souls began to encroach. Their desperate souls merged with my light as I envisioned a different reality, a place not bound to darkness but woven with joy. A flash, a jarring collision of worlds as the light overwhelmed the shadows, illuminating the chamber in a kaleidoscope of brilliant energy. The spectral woman faltered, her form flickering as the brilliant white light engulfed her presence, her face morphing into confusion and rage. You cannot take them from me. The last echo lingered before the shadows twisted violently and imploded, collapsing in on themselves as I threw my arms wide, letting the connection seize every piece of me. I felt the love of those lost encircle me, lovingly lifting me, interlacing our destinies, and a surge of light blasted forth, breaking the very fabric of despair that had kept us all imprisoned. In that moment of surrender, I saw their faces, and for the first time, they smiled. The walls around me crumbled into dust, the shadows dissipating like smoke, rife with memories unshackled. Yet just as the light rushed forth to claim victory, a pulse echoed in the corner of my mind. The woman's smile lingered even in the depths of the golden light, relentless and eternal. As the last remnants of darkness slipped from my grasp, a chilling revelation dawned on me, one that sent ice coursing through my veins. It was merely the beginning. Her influence had woven its way into the fabric of fate itself. And as the light poured out, an unsettling truth unraveled in my mind: not everything had been freed. She remained a part of me, a flicker nestled just beneath my very essence, a nightmare awaiting a moment of vulnerability to thrive once more.